before we get into some of these things, I want to explain how I think. I want to explain how I approach this show. And it is a statement Ronald Reagan used to have on his desk, and I have on the Levin TV desk. And it's, there's no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. There's no limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. You know, I don't mention what I said in the past or play audio from my past comments for the purpose of trying to show anybody up, for the purpose of trying to show you how prescient I am, or to justify some prediction, or any of the rest of it. That's not why I do it. I do it because I think very, very logically. I mention the past so you can see how I think, why I say what I say, and to discern the progression of events from your host as I approach them. And I know others want to pat themselves on the head and pat themselves on the back. That's not what I'm doing. Honestly, I don't have time to really listen to everybody else. I'm doing Levin TV. I'm prepping for my own radio show. I'm starting a new book again soon, and I'm going to have a show on Fox. I honestly don't have time to listen to what everybody else is saying, nor do I want to. That's what an audience is for. But I do need to go back here because there's some recent efforts here, the last 30 or 40 minutes, to protect Barack Obama from this text you've been hearing about all day. But in order to make sense out of all this, I need to go back, lay out what was said last March. I mean, I could go back to last February, but I'm not going to do that. On Fox and Friends, on March 5th, I will spare you my March 2nd radio show and my March 6th Hannity show. And then we're going to listen to what I said on Hannity this past Monday, just a few days ago. And then there's some news out that you haven't heard about as the Wall Street Journal news page tries to defend Barack Obama. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about a text exchanged by Page and Strzok, a text in which it makes clear that Barack Obama wants to be kept informed. So the debate now, or the so-called debate, is informed about what? Some people have argued and informed about Hillary Clinton, her email investigation. The Wall Street Journal says now, as I will explain in a little bit in more detail, that no, people who know Page and Strzok say it had nothing to do with that. The president just wanted information about the Russia investigation. That's not exactly right either. And you see, ladies and gentlemen, this is one text, and this text is very revealing. But it's more than that. As you listen to these audios, you'll put it together rather than me repeating myself, and then I'll take it the next step. Does that make sense, Mr. Producer? So I'm not playing this to say, look how smart I am. I was the first one to do this or that. I don't care. I care about this republic. I care about getting to the bottom of this. I have a unique vantage point, having served in the Reagan administration for 8 years, having served at the top levels of the Justice Department. And when I smell a rotting political event, I want you to know why. So we'll just spend a few minutes going back in order to go forward. Now, this is Fox and Friends, March 5th, 2017, nearly a year ago. If you can, I hope you listen very carefully as we walk through this step by step by step. Cut one, go.
The evidence is overwhelming. This is not about President Trump's tweeting. This is the Obama administration's spying. And the question isn't whether it's spied. We know they went to the FISA court twice. The question is, who did they spy on? The extent of the spying. That is, the Trump campaign, the Trump transition, Trump surrogates. And I want to walk you through this, the American people. Exhibit 1. Exhibit 1. This is all public. Head Street, Two separate sources with links to the counterintelligence community have confirmed that the FBI sought and was granted a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court. This is spying. In October, giving counterintelligence permission to examine the activity of, quote, U.S. persons in Donald Trump's campaign with ties to Russia. Let me go on. This isn't me. They say the first FISA request, sources say, named Trump, was denied back in June, denied by the court. But the second was drawn more narrowly and was granted in October after evidence was presented of a server possibly related to the Trump campaign and its alleged links to two banks. Now, sources suggest that a FISA warrant was granted to look at the full content of emails and other related documents that may concern U.S. persons. Now, I know people are hung up with Trump's word wiretapping. Well, how'd they get access to this server information? Does it really matter if it was wiretapping, electronic surveillance, or whatever it was? Exhibit 2, The Guardian, a well-known right-wing British paper. Here it is. Quote, The Guardian has learned the FBI applied for a warrant from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court over the summer in order to monitor 4 members of the Trump team suspected of irregular contacts with Russian officials. Keep in mind, this is during a presidential election. The sitting president, the incumbent party, is now investigating the presidential candidate of the Republican Party and his campaign to some extent. The FISA court turned down the application asking FBI counterintelligence investigators to narrow its focus. According to one report, the FBI was finally granted a warrant in October. Exhibit 3, McClatchy, another well-known right-wing newspaper. Here they have the agencies. Headline, FBI, 5 other agencies, 5 other Obama administration agencies probe possible covert Kremlin aid to Trump. The FBI and 5 other law enforcement intelligence agencies have collaborated for months in an investigation into Russian attempts to influence the November election, including whether money from Kremlin covertly aided presidential-elect Donald Trump. 2 people familiar with the matter said the agencies involved in the inquiry are the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the Justice Department, the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and representatives of the Director of the National Intelligence. Are you telling me Barack Obama didn't know what was going on in 6 agencies?
Hold on. Okay, keep going.
I'm not done. I need to make the case because the media seems to be confused about their own reporting. New York Times, another well-known liberal outlet, intercepted Russian communications, part of inquiry into Trump associates, January 19. The FBI is leading the investigations, aided by the NSA, the CIA, Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Unit. The investigators have accelerated their efforts in recent weeks, but have found no conclusive evidence of wrongdoing. Listen to this. One official said intelligence reports based on some of the wiretap communications have been provided to the White House. This is the New York Times,
another right-wing outlet.
4.
Another right-wing outlet,
Let's continue. New York Times again. NSA gets more latitude to share intercepted communications. In the final days of the Obama administration, the administration has expanded the power of the NSA to share globally intercepted personal communications with the government's 16 other intelligence agencies before applying privacy protections. Now, why would they do this on the way out the door? Well, March 1, Exhibit 6, Obama administration rushed to preserve intelligence of Russian election hacking. In the Obama administration's last days, listen to this, some White House officials scrambled to spread information about Russian efforts to undermine the presidential election and about possible contacts between associates of President-elect Trump and Russians across the government. I'm not done. Exhibit 7, New York Times. Flynn is said to have talked to Russians about sanctions Trump took office. Well, where'd they get this information? Well, Mark, you know, the FISA court, they're always monitoring the Russian ambassador. And so how do we know that? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But there's an awful lot of other activity.
Sure.
Here we have Washington Post. One more. Washington Post, March 2nd. U.S. investigators have examined contacts Attorney General Sessions had with Russian officials during the time he was advising Donald Trump's campaign. The focus of the U.S. counterintelligence investigation has been on communication between Trump campaign officials and Russia. Listen to this. The inquiry involving Sessions is examining his contacts while serving as Trump's foreign policy advisor in the spring
and summer of 2016. This has been going on for a year.
All right. Let's go back to cut 2, Mr. Producer. Go ahead.
How confident are you that this investigation, which was on so-called Russian hacking, but now the White House says this morning will be broadened to looking into executive overreach, how confident are you they will find something there?
I don't know, but they already found something. The issue isn't whether the Obama administration spied on the Trump campaign or transition or certain of its surrogates. The issue is the extent of it. Mm-hmm. They went into court a second time. They were so aggressive. They waited 4 or 5 months. They go back in October, weeks before the general election. They narrow their request. All of a sudden, we have leaks coming out on Flynn. Then we have a horrible meeting that took place between Sessions and so forth. And I'm telling you, as a former chief of staff to an attorney general of the United States in the Reagan administration, these are police state tactics. Now, what did Barack Obama know? He knew everything I just read to you apart from 1 or 2 articles. You know how I know? It's in the newspapers. It's right there. So Barack Obama not only knew this, but he gets a daily intelligence briefing. And let me tell you something about daily intelligence briefings. If your attorney general and your FBI is going to the FISA court to get a warrant to investigate aspects of an opposition party in the middle of a general election campaign, how much you want to bet the President of the United States knew that?
I don't want to bet
his
you on
opinion.
All right, I'm live now. I had a pretty good grasp on this based on the sparse information, but again, I'm not doing this to tell you how smart I am. I'm doing this to tell you I'm experienced, and I think these things through based on my own background. And I knew and I know today something is horribly, horribly wrong. And then the pushback came, almost immediate. And I want to move from this, after I show you the play for the pushback again. It was extreme, it was constant, it was all the big media, and it was stunning. And the reason is, well, I'll explain that later, as I did on Monday on Hannity's show. Let's go to cut 6, Mr. Producer. Go.
White House officials say that the president's sources were various conservative outlets, most prominently perhaps radio host Mark Levin, who seemed to take 3 basic chunks of information and combine them into one conspiracy theory of what he calls a silent coup.
And on the conservative Breitbart website, which Friday highlighted a conspiracy-loving radio talk show host, Mark Levin.
Now, the story asserted that Obama has been trying to undermine Trump at every turn. As you can see from the headline, it was inspired by a Thursday night radio segment by conservative talk show host Mark Levin.
Apparently, this idea came from right-wing radio host and unlicensed gynecologist Mark Levin, who ranted about these wiretaps.
By the way, let me stop there. Maybe so, but I'm not an unlicensed proctologist like you are, pal. Go ahead.
Radio show. That show was then written up by Breitbart as Mark Levin to Congress investigate Obama's silent coup versus Trump.
What does the White House gain by the president by Steve Bannon most likely handing the president of the United States a Breitbart article and talking about what a rabid right-wing talk show host has been theorizing?
Start with firebrand conservative radio host Mark Levin. Briefly, for people who don't know, who is he?
He's got quite a following, and he's not just a conservative figure, but often espousing relatively radical positions about the need to reinvent the Constitution and the government and ways in which we think about society.
The notion that Mark Levin is a news outlet, it's not the New York Times, it's not the Washington Post, it's not the Wall Street Journal, it's not the LA Times, it's not a major news network. It's Mark Levin, a guy who, I know what talk radio guys do, on left and right, mostly on right. They rile people up with outrageous charges, and nobody keeps count of them. But here's the President of the United States getting his information from these people.
Evidence for suggesting President Obama has committed a crime seems pretty thin.
The detailed speculation from a conspiracy-loving talk show host, Mark Levin.
Okay, I think we can now officially declare that Trump has a worse media diet than the son of Sam Killer. And he got all his news from a talking dog who told him to murder.
I'm back live. So when all this took place, 2 things. I knew I was onto something. If I wasn't onto something, why would they care? That's number 1. Number 2, there were a handful of colleagues in this business who came to my defense. Most of them sat on their mouths and didn't say a word. And now they pat themselves on the back for having broken this. I don't pat myself on the back for anything. I just laid out for you March. And I'm going to take the next step, and where this may be headed when we return. I'll be right back. I've always believed, and we don't have enough time in this segment to build on the foundation I just laid for you. We'll do it right after the bottom of the hour, and I hope you'll stay here. You see, I've always believed that it was impossible for the Obama White House and Obama himself not to know the general outlines of what was taking place in his administration. In fact, it would be almost impossible if he didn't. He gets the daily presidential briefing, which includes counterintelligence investigations. If you have a counterintelligence investigation going on based on a warrant secured by the FBI and Justice Department, you better believe that's mentioned in those briefings, which is why I continue to press Congress to get copies of them. We also know Attorney General Lynch, Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, FBI Director Comey, Deputy FBI Director McCabe, Strzok, Page, and many others knew about these FISA applications and knew about these FISA warrants and the extension. Why would they keep it from the National Security Council? Ben Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Counsel, who's a big-time leaker, why would they have kept it from Susan Rice, the number one national security person advising the President of the United States? Why would they keep it from Valerie Jarrett, who had her finger in everything? And why would they keep it from Barack Obama? More when I return. And on Fox, I have continued to return to the issue of Obama. I was asked by Sean Hannity to come on the show Monday, and I agreed. And I was listening to some of the guests before me as I was in the last segment. This was Monday night. Some very, very brilliant people. Devin Nunes was speaking. Very, very courageous man. As you know, I'm a big fan of his and have been for a long time, given what he's been through and what he's trying to get done here. And as I was listening, I thought I needed to return to this issue of getting out of the weeds and focusing on this president, Obama. Let's listen to a little bit of this. Cut 3, go.
Well, you can see all hell's breaking loose. The mainstream media pretty much is trying to keep a lid on it, as are the Democrats. But the fact of the matter is...
By the way, this was the Nunes House Intel Committee memo that I was talking about. Go ahead.
Huge problem with the top levels of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I say that with great trepidation. And I'll tell you why. I was chief of staff to an attorney general. I knew at least 2 former directors of the FBI. We worked incredibly well with the FBI over at the Justice Department. It would never even have occurred to us to interfere with their activities for or against. It never would have occurred to us to interfere with an election. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? All this talk about Russia interfering with our election, which Russia sought to do, and not just our election, but elections all over the world. But they failed. The FBI also sought to interfere with our election. Mr. Comey did. Mr. McCabe did, the director, former, the current deputy, who will be out soon, as did their underlings. Mr. Strzok, Ms. Page, Raddick, Baker, and others whose names will go down in history infamously. We also know that Loretta Lynch did the same thing. And I want to emphasize something to you. There's no way in hell Barack Obama didn't know some of this. There's no way in hell Barack Obama didn't know that his Department of Justice and FBI had filed applications with the FISA court, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, for counterintelligence investigation. There's no way he wasn't informed about that either directly from the FBI, the Attorney General, or in his daily presidential briefing, his intelligence briefing. There is no way that they wouldn't have told him because of the potential that it could affect the election.
I misspoke, by the way. That was from Levin TV on January 24th of this year, and it's out there if you care to listen to it. Now, this past Monday, 3 nights ago, I was on Hannity, and here's what I said. Cut 4, go.
Now we know why Schiff and the rest of them are fighting so hard. Now we know why the left-wing Praetorian Guard Democrat media are fighting so hard, trashing Nunes, me, you, and others. Let's walk through this quickly. Who are they trying to protect? Hillary Clinton. Sean, who else are they trying to protect? Barack Obama. His name never comes up, so let me help everybody with this. Loretta Lynch knew about these FISA warrants. Yates, the Deputy Attorney General. The extensions, Rob Rosenstein, now the Deputy Attorney General, he knew. FBI Director Comey, Deputy Director McCabe, Strzok, the head of counterintelligence, Page, his girlfriend. Who else would have known about these FISA applications and warrants? Well, let me tell you a little secret. These are counterintelligence efforts. You have to assume the National Security Council and the White House knew. Why would the FBI, the Justice Department, keep that from the National Security Director in the White House? Why would they keep it from the Deputy Director in the White House? So why would it be left out of the President's daily intelligence briefing, which I mentioned in March, Congress also needs to get a hold of? I am telling you, we're looking at the FBI, we're looking at the Department of Justice, and we're not looking at all at the White House. Hillary Clinton paid for a warrant. That's the easiest way we can put it. Hillary Clinton colluded with the Russians, but it appears the FBI at the senior-most levels colluded with the Russians too. Whether it was witting or unwitting, it doesn't matter. That's a fact. So the senior level of the FBI tried to interfere with this election as well. This is why it's such a big deal. Now, I know Republicans are bending over backwards saying this has nothing to do with Mueller. It has everything to do with Mueller, because it transitioned from a counterintelligence investigation into a criminal investigation after Comey, of all things, confesses to being a leaker. And Mueller is the former FBI director. Those are his people. That's his environment. He's not out there as some independent force. But I want to get back to Barack Obama. It's his FBI, his Department of Justice, his State Department, his candidate. I cannot believe for a minute that the National Security Council didn't know about this. And to show you how elaborate this is, now that more information's coming out, we haven't even gotten to the incidental collection of intelligence on people, including, by the way, Sessions when he met with and spoke to the Russian ambassador, Michael Flynn when he spoke to the Russian ambassador, the unmasking and leaking of his name, the record number of unmasking of American citizens in Trump world, and so forth and so on. And the American people have been subjected to a massive propaganda and misinformation campaign by the Clinton campaign, by the Obama administration. Let me ask you a logical question, Sean. Why would the Russians want Donald Trump to be president of the United States where they can get everything they want from Hillary Clinton? Whether it's uranium, whether it's undermining our defense by cutting military spending, by refusing to secure our border. Why in the world would the Russians want Trump as opposed to Hillary Clinton?